Hey, what's up everyone? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today I am finally releasing my custom Apex EQ target video. Now my goal is to educate you on various topics along the way, but I will have chapters provided below, so keep that in mind. If you skip ahead, I will assume that you already know what's been covered in prior chapters. I'm also pleased to say that this works on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox to an extent. So whether you have an affordable, inexpensive headset or $100 IEMs, or you went all the way up to the $4,000 endgame stuff, you can still see the benefits of this EQ. Those with cheaper or less expensive audio products will probably see the greatest improvements here, but everyone's going to benefit. I also don't gatekeep anything. All of this stuff is free. If you do want to support the channel, I have links in the description below for that per your request. But again, I don't do it for that reason, so don't feel obligated to use it. Otherwise, I just want this tool to be helpful to as many people as possible. I'll also have a link in the description below to take you to a Google form to request future game targets. I have seen YouTube comments on games like Rainbow Six Siege, so I have seen it. I promise you I'm not ignoring it. It just takes a lot of work, but based off the feedback I get both in the comments and on that form, that will kind of prioritize, which ones I address first. That same form will also have the ability to submit your audio product if it's missing from the list you are about to see. So if you have a headset, IEM, or headphone and you don't see it here, let me know. I'll do my best to get my hands on it, add it to the database, and that will help you better utilize this tool to get the most out of what you own. Now, I've spent a lot of time analyzing the audio in this game. I've used tools like spectrum analyzers to isolate footsteps, shield cracks, thirsts, etc. And it's a long process, but this produces the best results because the goal of my EQ is to not just boost footstep sounds, but to also reduce spikes in other areas that cause listening fatigue. A shield crack or a thirst has a louder, high-pitched noise, which at higher volumes can cause you to wince and then turn down the audio a little bit because you're trying to compensate for that spike that damages your hearing. So the goal of this EQ is to help bring down some of those cues that cause that ear fatigue and clean up the audio mix while simultaneously bringing footsteps more forward. So on Xbox, if you want full parametric EQ, your options are a little bit more limited. You have the new SteelSeries 5X that recently came out, which gives you a lot of customization options for a fairly modest price of about $130. Then you have the more expensive Astro A50X, which is more feature rich, but I don't think gives you any extra competitive advantage over something like the Nova 5X. If you don't want to get either of those or you already have your own solution, well, we have two ways to approach this. You can either use a 10-band EQ built into a headset. So if you have a Nova 7 or the new Stealth 600 Gen 3, for example, we can use this tool to better tune those. If you don't have any product with built-in EQ, you can still purchase the Dolby Access app, which is much cheaper than buying a whole new audio solution. And that gives you custom 10-band EQ with every audio product you own on Xbox. It's extremely powerful and it helps a lot kind of bridge the gap depending on what solution you have. That's really important if you're using something like an IEM or a headphone on Xbox, but you want to improve your sound. On PlayStation, your options are somewhat similar. You have the Nova 5 or 5P or the Astro A50X, again, if you want parametric EQ built into the headset. You also have the ability of running this magical little black box, which is the Quidolix 5K. If you have IEMs like the SimGot EM6Ls that I love so much, and you want to customize the sound, you can buy this little DAC. In the software, you can actually configure it for PlayStation mode, and that will give you full mic and audio support. Then the mobile app can be used to provide custom parametric EQ on everything you own. This does still work with analog headsets, it works with analog headphones, and of course IEMs. Now, if you want a more traditional DAC amp solution for PlayStation 5, the Creative G6 is still one of the best options for the money. It's older now, but it does support microphone pass-through, and it has a 10-band EQ, which again works with any analog product connected to it. You also have the much more expensive and larger Creative X5, which has a very similar feature set. It has a little bit more power and a balanced output, but it still has a separate mic input with its own volume knob. Really, really handy. And it also gives you the feature of merging Bluetooth audio from your phone into the analog out. So it's more feature rich, but G6 is really all you need from the audio output side. Now, if you want to use IEMs for gaming on console, but you still want a microphone, there's a company called Antlion that makes something called the Kimura mic. Now, this works on Xbox and PlayStation. It comes with a little adapter even to plug it into your controller directly. And this also works with the Quidolix 5K. I'll have a link in the description for that, but that basically allows you to run any IEM as a gaming headset for console, which is a huge competitive advantage. I think they provide excellent bang for your buck. So be sure to look into that. Antlion also makes something called a mod mic, which they have a wired and wireless version. So if you buy expensive headphones and you want to add a microphone to that, you can use something like that as well. Now in Apex Legends, the settings are relatively simple. You want to reduce competing noise as much as possible. So we want to turn down the music, turn down dialogue, chat, those types of things that would be so much louder. You don't want to have constant music playing in the background when you're trying to hear a footstep in the distance. So I know this is going to be a lot of obvious for some people, but just simply reducing those sliders can make a big difference on what you can hear. Now, people are going to have strong opinions on stereo versus 7.1 versus the 4-channel mode and getting surround sound headsets and all these things. I'm going to try to simplify this, but I also want to explain it a little bit. First off, for me, I prefer stereo in pretty much all cases. This is very specific to your audio products and the way you hear things. So I want to explain why people have such strong and conflicting opinions here on which setting to choose. First off, it starts with something called an HRTF. The HRTF is head-related transfer function, and from an objective standpoint, it's how we get music from, let's say, the game engine into your head. Now, there are different types of HRTFs. You have Dolby Atmos that has its own algorithms that takes objects in audio space and converts that into a left and right channel. And that HRTF will determine how you hear some of the audio cues in the game. The game itself has its own. If you're just running it in stereo and you convert it, it's still running in a multi-channel type arrangement on the game engine. That's how it knows where things are forward and back. But it's then converting that to stereo so you can hear it. If you get a 7.1 headset, your headset's still only 2 speakers. So even if the game passed 7.1 out to your headset receives a 7.1 signal, it's then doing its own conversion to 2-channel. And all of these conversions can affect the way you hear audio cues. Now, to make this even more confusing, we have our own HRTFs. Now, if you wear this headset and put it on your head and then press in on it, that changes the sound. Shifting it forward and back will also change the frequencies. And this head-related transfer function is from the headset to you, or IEMs to you. All of these variables, again, will affect how you process audio cues, how your brain builds this 360-degree sphere of information, audio cues, so you know where things are for audio localization. So I like stereo, but there's a really complex reason why a lot of people will like 7.1 versus stereo and believe in different headsets. I can't tell you which one's going to work for you, but I can simplify things and say in stereo with this EQ, you're going to get like 90 to 95% there. And of course, there's going to be tools out there like Hisuvi and Loudness EQ on the PC side. And some people are going to have their opinions on, the pros and cons of that for virtualization and channel balancing and all of that. I just want to keep it simple. I can tell you that if you do custom EQ, I've never felt the need to mess with any virtualization software or adding all these extra plugins to get the most out of it, because you really want to work on amplitude first, which is how loud a footstep is compared to other things. And again, the whole listening fatigue. So we're just going to focus on the EQ. Okay, so we're finally going to build a custom EQ for your particular audio product. And this is why this tool is so powerful. So have the page ready. Maybe look at the description to get the link. You're about to see it, but if you have it pulled up, it'll help you follow along to kind of build your own as we go. I will also show you how to translate this into a 10-band. So if you don't have full parametric EQ, just kind of stick around and I'll help translate it for that as well. The reason why this is so powerful is we can't use a generic universal EQ for every audio product out there. You can have 3 different headsets that will all sound very, very different from each other. So if I boost 2000 hertz on one and that headset has a scoop at 2000, then it'll help. But if another headset is really strong at 2000 hertz and then I boost it again, it will sound pretty bad. So that's where this tool is so powerful and why we want to customize your sound profile for your exact model. Now I want to show you what that actually means. So I have a headphone measuring rig where it simulates the human ear and we can measure frequency response of every audio product I have. That's why this is all stuff that I've either purchased or been sent to review that I've covered in the past or will be covering. So if you have something like the Astro A50 Gen 4, this is the frequency response if Astro's command center is set to flat. And then you look at something like a Bayer Dynamic MMX 100, very different sound signature. And then let's just go ahead and get the drop PC38X in here. Again, wildly different sound signature. Even if you don't know what this means, I'll very quickly explain it. The left side is your bass, the middle is your mid-range, and the right side is your treble. So if I did plus 5 decibels at 100 hertz, it's going to add 5 to all of these. And you can see with the Beyerdynamic MMX 100, it didn't need more bass. If anything, it needs a reduction. And this is why I wanted to do this custom tool to give you the best possible solution specifically for Apex. So the most important part of this video is how to apply custom EQ, and you may have skipped directly here, so I'm going to assume you know what some of this stuff means. Now, here I have the Razer Blackshark V2 Pro. This is the sound signature of it, and you can tell it's very bass heavy and a scoop in the mid-range. The big trick here is I have the Apex Legends target at the bottom. You can see gaming targets, so I'm going to click on it. This is my custom EQ target that we want to make other products sound like, which are better suited for Apex. Now, the footstep frequencies that I focused on are actually closer to 200 hertz in this game. We fill in the mids a little bit. There is a scoop, so like 1600 hertz seems to be a really popular frequency based off a lot of measurements I did, where it's like a secondary harmonic of footsteps. You hear a lot of footstep detail in that frequency, just a little bit around it. Now, I also made some little scoops here. You can see some notches. This is to soften the ring effect for cracking shields, using a med kit on yourself, things like that. They tend to pick a lot of these frequencies in the 3,000 and 5,000 hertz area, and this softens that a bit, again, addressing the listening fatigue earlier. So we see what we want the headset to sound like. We see what it measures like. Now let's make it sound like that. So all I have to do is click on Equalizer on the left-hand side. I'm going to click Auto EQ. The website will do its thing, and now I have settings generated on the left-hand side to make this headset sound close to perfect for Apex. And honestly, the difference that you can get from this is so profound. The Blackshark's like a fun headset. It's bass heavy. It's very immersive depending on the game, but it is not competitive for FPS gaming in its default form. This is a monumental difference for footstep tracking and not having all those other stuff kind of take away from the mix. So if you're using Razer Synops, just set that to flat. Go to custom, have no EQ, just as an example. Then we're going to use this with our Windows-based software. And in this case, we're going to use Equalizer APO with the piece add-on. So I'm going to click Export. We'll have a little pop-up here. Now, I saved one earlier, so I'm just going to click Save Apex Demo. We can label it whatever you want. I'll hit Save and Replace, and then we're going to open Equalizer APO, the piece add-on. So you would just open piece, and here's a list of other stuff I've added, but we want to click Import right here. Now, I'm going to browse for the text file that we just saved from the SquigLink website, which again, that link will be in the description below. That's where you access all of this stuff. So we click Open. Yes, I want to replace the current equalization. It'll reopen, and now I have the full custom EQ done and ready to go. Once you understand this process, you can EQ things super, super quick, and it'll match almost perfectly. Now, there is one thing I want to point out. Depending on how much custom EQ it had to make, it's going to adjust something up top called a preamp. If you add way too much frequency, so let's say I took 1900 hertz and this got boosted by like 10 decibels, it could create distortion because it's boosting an area so high. So if you enable custom EQ and you feel like it's a little bit quieter, it's because it's trying to make sure you have no distortion. You can bring this back up a little bit. I find in many cases it's kind of conservative for Apex, and you'll still be able to get a lot of the same volume. So we have the custom EQ done. I can hit save. It defaults as saving as the name of the file, which is fine for this case. So now I have that preset ready to go. And if I change through different audio products, I can just click that anytime I want to use it again for PC. Now, let's say you don't want to use Equalizer APO because you're using SteelSeries Sonar. You want to use the benefits that that software gives you. So in this case, it's a little bit more manual, but we can still make that work. So I'm going to create a new preset, and we're going to call it, we'll call it Apex Razer Demo, and we'll just leave it at that. So I'm going to hit save. It's going to be blank. Now, what you want to do is basically copy these settings as much as you can. Equalizer APO with piece gives you a ton of adjustability. Sonar is close. So all I have to do is click this. I'm going to type 21 and hit enter. The Q factor of 1 is basically how wide or narrow we adjust something, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then minus 9.3. So I just copied that first setting, and then 39 hertz. I'll just click another one, and I'll do 39. Minus 11.4, which it's not going to let me do. Let me do this, 39 I picked gain instead. That's a habit of mine because it's backwards on the other program. And then we'll do minus 11.4. So that one's dropped and it's a Q of 0.5. So again, I'm matching those left two bands. This doesn't look like this because it's showing you how the EQ is adjusting it, not what the headset sounds like. It has no idea what your headset sounds like. 130 hertz is set to minus 5.5. So we'll do 130 hertz minus 5.5, and the Q factor was 2, which is more narrow. So watch how this changes the band, and you can see how it tightens up. So as we go through all the way down these steps, we are now building that exact same EQ in Sonar instead of equalizer APO. Now you can hit save, you can duplicate, you can even share if other people have the same headset as you and you want to share those settings. That's very easy to do. So let's say you have that same Razer Black Shark, but you're playing on PlayStation and you can't utilize Sonar or equalizer APO at peace because those programs don't run on PlayStation. So we're going to see how close we can get to this target curve, and I'm going to explain how this works for 10 band. This applies for anyone trying to convert a curve for Dolby Atmos. If you have the Creative G6 DAC, a SteelSeries Nova 7, for example, all of these devices that have 10 band EQs that work on console and save to the headset, we want to try to get this to match as closely as possible. So I'm going to hit refresh. We have our same headset here, and we have this target curve. I'm going to click equalizer again. Now I cannot hit auto EQ because on Razer Synops, if we look at the bands, it says 31, 64, 125. This is what a 10 band EQ functions and looks like. We don't have the same level of control as some other products out there. Now, we want to replicate this on the website so we can align ourselves with what the app is allowing us to do. Now, this process is a little bit manual at first. So what I suggest doing, and I can explain this if you like, but the Q factor of 1.41, that aligns pretty much with what a 10 band equalizer works as far as a Q factor goes. And I'll show you how that changes our adjustments. So I'm just going to hit copy, and we're just going to paste all the way down. Now we have to type in the bands here so we can again match what we see in Synops. So you have 31, 63, 125. So let's do this. 31, 4,000, 8,000, and 16,000 hertz. So we've now recreated what the Synops DAC allows us to do. And if you notice, the other downside of this particular headset is I can only go plus or minus 5 decibels. So let's just see what happens when I do minus 5 decibels here. Okay, we still have a lot of bass, right? So we're going to do minus 5 decibels on this one as well. You can see I am reducing the bass. We're not going to approach the same bass reduction that we get using SteelSeries Sonar or equalizer APO, but I think we can agree that taking off 5 decibels is going to be helpful in this case. There's also a big hump right here. So when we look at the 125 hertz, let's just try minus 3. Okay, I don't want to lose too much here because, again, you got to keep in mind that footstep frequency is important in that range. So let's add 2 decibels. Getting a little bit closer, let's add 3. Now we're at closer to that target, so I'm going to go with minus 2. So you can see we're kind of building, and that takes a little bit away. We're close. Now, do we want to do 3 or 2? I'd say we just stick with minus 2. You can see there's a scoop here. Again, the mid-range is kind of sucked out on the Razer headset. So I'm going to go with plus 3. And look how close I got here just by trying to match what Synops is allowing me to do. This frequency is really close, so we're not going to mess with it too much, but I am going to, for the 1000 hertz, let's do minus 1. That looks great right there. For 2000 hertz, let's go to plus 2. And this whole section here, this is such a key part of Apex that the fact that with minimal adjustments, we're already really close. Now, I remember I was talking about the ringing effects being in the 3 to 5K area, and this particular headset has a peak at 4000 hertz. So I want to do minus 3, minus 4 maybe. Now we're getting a little bit closer. It's not perfect because I can't do parametric EQ here, but it's close enough. The high frequencies, 8000 hertz and up, you want to tune by ear. If it sounds really sparkly and bright, then you can do minus 3 here, for example, and you can see it's lowering the upper treble. And the same with 16,000 hertz. I don't feel like you need to touch these super high frequencies with the Razer, but that's how you would adjust it. Just to quickly explain what the Q factor is, and when you look at 5,000 or 500 hertz, if I did minus 10, right, Obviously, I can't do this with Synops, -10. You see this huge scoop? If I did a Q factor of, instead of 1.41, I do 0.4, look how it brings everything down around it, because a lower Q number is a wider adjustment. Conversely, if I set my Q factor to 10, look how narrow that adjustment is. So a 10-band EQ is set to 1.41, and that's how you will adjust accordingly. So now that I've developed a curve that gets really close to my ideal target for the game, because again, we can't go lower than -5 for this particular headset, all you would do is match it on Synops. So 125 we did -2, 250 we did +3, and then 500 hertz we did +3, 250 I had +3, and you can see again this is the byproduct of that. 1000 hertz -1, 2000 +2, -4, and then again I said the rest can be left the same. So it looks kind of funky, but we're going to save it. This is now saved to the headset, and I can benefit from this EQ on PlayStation. Or again, if you were using Dolby Atmos, that gives you 9 decibels of adjustment. So you can always use Dolby Atmos, and it gives you a lot of power there, or the Access app. So this is how you build your own custom EQ for 10-band as well. Now, some people may not want to mess with all of that custom stuff, or maybe you have a product that's not on my website and you want to try to get somewhere close to what the game could benefit from. I have a universal EQ here. Now, I know that kind of goes against with what I said earlier, but I'm going to explain why this is still somewhat usable. This gets us close to the curve. Now, I boosted the frequencies that I thought were important on a universal tune, and then we have these notches here that are going to get rid of very specific frequencies in the game to fix problems I have with like these really high pitch frequencies. So we are shaping the general sound signature of any audio product you may use. Now, if you saw those measurements earlier where some have a lot of bass and some have little, the beauty with Sonar is once I shaped my general tune using these settings, and I'll have the numbers on the screen to make it easier for you, but just use my link in the description below. It'll auto import this if you want a universal EQ. But now that we've set all of these numbers to match, or you've imported it, you can just use the bass slider down here. So look at this. If you have a bass light product and you want a little bit more, just use this tune and then adjust the slider to fit your preference and your particular model. The same thing happens with the mid-range, which can help depending, again, if you have a Razer versus a Drop PC38X, and then the same thing happens with the upper frequencies for treble. So I know this isn't going to be the perfect tune, but again, if you don't have any other choice or you're kind of confused on what to do here, this is going to still get you really, really close to a good baseline target. Now, you might have a product like the Turtle Beach Stealth 700 Gen 2, which doesn't have any 10-band. It does like bass, vocal boost, and treble. But something like that, you just, use superhuman hearing, set it to 20% to get rid of some of that bass, and then kind of adjust to your liking, or just set it to signature sound and use the Dolby Access app, for example. The same thing happens with products like the Astro A30, which gives you a really odd frequency selection to replicate. If you only have 5 bands to equalize, I talked about using your whole Q factor before. Instead of 1.41, switch it to 1. Even though it should be 0.707, I find that most of the headsets in practice adjust at a Q factor of 1 when they only give you a 5-band. Now, if you have the Astro A50X, I did create a custom EQ for this game already that is best suited for that software. I did share it to the Logitech community hub, so search for Apex Legends Gadgetry Tech. You'll find it there. It's in pending status, so once it gets approved, depending on how fast this video comes out, you should find it there within a day or two. And then lastly, here's my custom EQ on 10 bands. So if you don't have the ability to use Sonar as well, or the knowledge or ability to do custom EQ by a measurement on the site, these are really generic tunes. They do not make a big difference, to be honest. The benefit really comes into customizing it, but this can help a little bit. The most important thing with Apex in general is to reduce the sub bass, everything below 150 hertz, boost the mid-range a little bit, so maybe the 500 hertz area, and then the 1 to 2000 hertz area is kind of critical for footstep tracking. You can play with the 4000 hertz area to your liking, but that's basically how you want to approach the targeting. So I know this was a really long, convoluted way of explaining custom EQ, but I hope that after using this, you see the power of it. This is really a game changer, like legitimately makes a big difference depending on the audio product you have. and it does work whether it's something cheap or something really high end. I've tried it on everything with hours of testing, and I'm really excited to share it with you all. So if you found the video helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe so I could see you in the next video. Be sure to drop a comment below. Let me know what you think of this, if this was a good workflow or explanation on how this works, or whatever your feedback is. I'd love to hear from you. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.